Yanneti neti yatad utsris rikshavaha Visrijyadoratmyam ananya sohrida Hrido bhagu yarha padam pade pade Namamanantitar Jagannath. Visrijyadoratmyamananya sohrida
Jo Bhaguyar Padam
Hrido bhagu yarha padam pade pade
Alam Namanantita Yaneti Neti Tiatat Usvikshava
Neti neti yatad utsris rikshavaha
Ishadorat Yamananya Sorida
Visrijyadoratmyamananya sohrida
Vido Bhaguyar Padam Pade Pade Param Param Vaishnavamatmanantan
Param param Vaishnavam amanantitar
Taneti Neti Yatita Dutashvivaha
Yanneti neti yatad utsrit shrikshava
Vishvijaya Durayatmanantashulava
Visrijyadoratmyamananya sohrida
Arupa Yuyarta Parambare Pare
Hrido bhagu yarha padam pade pade
Param Param Vaishnavam Amanantitar
Param padam Vaishnavam amanantitar
Yaneti Tityatar Uchrik Savaha
Yanneti neti tyutar utsis rikshavaha
Vishra Doryatmamyam Ananya Sohrida
Visrijyadoratmyamananya sohrida
Hrido Paguyarha Padam Pare Pare
Hrido bhagu yarha padam pade pade
Param Padam Vaishnavam Amanantitad
Param param Vaishnavam amanantitar
Yaneti Neti Tyatad Utishrikashavaha
Yanneti neti yatad usrik rikshavaha
Vishrijya Doratamyam Ananya Saurada
Visrijyadoratmyamananya sohrida
Hrido Pakwa Gu Hiraha Padam Pade Pade
Hrido bhagu yarha padam pade pade
Param param Vaishnavam amanantitan
Param param Vaishnavam amanantitar
Yaneti neti tyatat utsishikshavaha
Yanneti neti yatadutsis rikshavaha
Vishrijya duratmyamananya sohrida
Visrijyadoratmyamananya sohrida
Hrido bhaguyarha param pare pare
Hrido yarha padam pade pade Param param Vaishnavam amanantitar Yanneti neti yatadutsis rikshavaha Visrijyadoratmyamananya sohrida Ridopaguyarabadam pare pare. Are there any devotees online that would like to chant? Padam, the Supreme. Relation with the personality of Godhead. Amananti, do they know? Tat, that. Yat, which. Na iti, not this. Na iti, not this. Iti, thus. Atat, godless. Utsisrikshavaha, those who desire to avoid. Visrijya, giving it up completely. Doratmyam, perplexities. Ananya, absolutely. Soridaha, in goodwill. Hrida upaguya, taking them into his heart. Arha, that which is only worshipable. Param, lotus feet. Pare pare, at every moment. Translation. The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities, but worships the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart. The other one. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, Madhama, my abode, is mentioned several times, and according to the version of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, there exists the unlimited spiritual sky, wherein the planets are called Vaikunthas, or the abode of the Personality of Godhead. In that sky, which is far, far beyond the material sky and its sevenfold coverings, there is no need of the sun or the moon, nor is there necessity of electricity for illumination, because the planets are self-illuminating and more brilliant than the material suns. Pure devotees of the Lord are absolutely in harmony with the personality of Godhead, or in other words, they always think of the Lord as their only dependable friend and well-wisher. They do not care for any mundane creature up to the status of Brahma, the Lord of the universe. Only they can definitely have a clear vision of the Vaikuntha planets. Such pure devotees, being perfectly directed by the Supreme Lord, do not create any artificial perplexity in the matter of transcendental understanding by wasting time in discussing what is Brahman and what is non-Brahman, or Maya. Nor do they falsely think of themselves as one with the Lord, or argue that there is no existence of the Lord separately, or that there is no God at all, or that the living beings themselves are God, or that when God incarnates himself, he assumes a material body. Nor do they concern themselves with many obscure speculative theories, which are in actuality so many stumbling blocks on the path of transcendental understanding. Apart from the class of impersonalists or non-devotees, there are also classes who pose themselves as devotees of the Lord, but at heart maintain the idea of salvation by becoming one with the impersonal Brahman. They wrongly manufacture their own way of devotional service by open debauchery and mislead others who are simpletons or debauchees like themselves. All these non-devotees and debauchees are, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, Duratmas, or crooked souls in the dress of Mahatmas, or great souls. Such non-devotees and debauchees are completely excluded from the list of transcendentalists by the presentation of this particular verse by Shukadev Goswami. In the Vaikuntha planets, the Vaikuntha planets are factually the supreme residential places called Padam Padam. The impersonal Brahmajyoti is also called the Padam Padam due to its being the rays of the Vaikuntha planets, as the sun rays are the rays of the sun. In the Bhagavad Gita 14.27, it is clearly said that the impersonal Brahmajyoti rests on the person of the Lord. And because everything rests on the Brahmajyoti directly and indirectly, everything is generated from the Lord. Everything rests on him, and after annihilation, everything is merged in him only. Therefore, nothing is independent of him. A pure devotee of the Lord no longer wastes valuable time in discriminating the Brahman from non-Brahman, because he knows perfectly well that the Lord, Parabrahman, by his Brahman energy, is interwoven in everything, and thus everything is looked upon by a devotee as the property of the Lord. The devotee tries to engage everything in his service and does not create perplexities by falsely lording it over the creation of the Lord. He is so faithful that he engages himself as well as everything else in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In everything, the devotee sees the Lord, and he sees everything in the Lord. The specific disturbance created by a duratma or crooked soul is due to his maintaining that the transcendental form of the Lord is something material. So, Madhama, Paramam Padam, that supreme abode of Krishna, that is the destination, and that is the residence place of the Supreme Lord. And when we understand that everything is emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we will worship him with all of our hearts. And this is stated in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, text 8, that everything, all the spiritual and material worlds are emanating from Krishna, from me. One who understands this worships me with all their hearts. So these persons, these transcendentalists, they're called Mahatmas. And they know about that supreme abode. That place is not illumined by the moon or the sun. There is no need for electricity. So that is the specific quality about the spiritual world, that it's self-illuminating. And this is an interesting example because in this material world, there's no chance of seeing anything without these sources of illumination. Practically speaking, this entire material universe, which is like a small egg, well, it's like an egg. Of course, it's very large. But in the vast ocean of universes, it's a small bubble emanating from Mahavishnu. And so this universe is pretty much run by the sun. And there's a nice verse in the Brahma Samhita that this sun is moving according to the Lord's order, which is more or less the king of all the planets. And so we can understand that without the sun, there is no chance for this material world, which is sort of a large machine to move, to churn. And we can't see a thing without some electricity or some fire. But the supreme abode is different. It is not requiring any external illuminating sources. So this is a very practical distinction between that supreme transcendental abode and that supreme situation, that param padam, versus this place. So Prabhupada spends quite some time in this purport discussing that the difference between the pure devotees who are in the category of the transcendentalists and the perfect transcendentalists for that matter, and that actually these other persons who may pose themselves as transcendentalists or may even make their own way of devotional service, these persons are not, they're excluded from the lists, actually, of transcendentalists. So such persons have many theories. And there's a lecture from Prabhupada where he states that he has come to teach all these nonsense, that there is God. And he's ready to make a challenge to any of these nonsense that have their own concoctions, that there is no God, that that God is dead, that God is void, that God is impersonal, or that we are God. All these are nonsense ideas, and factually they make a problem in devotional life. It's stated, Shruti Smriti Puranadi, that's the beginning of the verse, that any devotional service which doesn't follow the Shruti, the Smriti, the Puranas, the Pancharatra, like that, Upanishads, these authorized Vedic scriptures, that just makes a problem in society. And it's stated in the Bhagavad Gita that if we give up the rules and regulations of the scriptures, I think it's called Utsrajya, then there's no chance of any happiness or perfection. Na sukham na param gatim, that we won't attain that supreme destination. So all these persons which were discussed in the purport, they like the impersonalists or non-devotees, and the persons who kind of concoct their own process of devotional service, all these persons, they can't reach that padam, that supreme abode, which is really exclusively the only desire of the transcendentalists, of the pure devotees. This point is kind of interesting. They know about that place and they harmonize with the Lord and his will. And when they do that, they experience so much pleasure and satisfaction and purification that they actually pray, as Lord Chaitanya has prayed in the 4th verse of the Shikshashtaka, that they don't want anything of this material world. Nor do they even desire liberation from this material world. They just want Krishna service. And wherever there is Krishna service, that place is the residence of Krishna, actually. That is where Krishna is. So, yes, Maharaj. It's the orange one.
The impersonalists are supposed to be saying that everything is Brahman. But as soon as they begin and they say, this is Brahman, this is not Brahman, then they become contradictory. Because if everything is one, high volume, then why are you making discrimination between what is spirit and what is matter? Whereas a Vaishnava, he understands actually that everything, sarvam kalvidam Brahma, everything is Brahma, everything is related with the Supreme Lord through his energy. The Supreme Lord is the person, and he is related with everything through his energies. It's like the sun planet is the source of the sunshine. Sunshine goes out all throughout the universe, and another energy of the sun is electricity. These energies are all pervading, but the sun planet does not go there directly. This is how the Vaishnavas see everything. That everything is related to him, so they don't have to go and say, this is Brahman, this is not Brahman, because they know everything is Brahman. Even the material world is Brahman because it's part of the emanation of the Lord. It's part of the full manifestation coming from the Lord. And a devotee doesn't see anything as material in the higher sense. For teaching Krishna consciousness, teaching those who are not in such understanding, he makes discrimination, makes distinction between matter and spirit. But in the higher sense, he knows that everything is spirit, everything is spiritual, because it's all related with the Supreme Lord. It's all Brahman. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahman. Brahma Bhuya prasanatmana shochati nakangshati. One who's engaged in devotional service, he sees everything in relationship with the Lord, and he's on the transcendental platform. Whereas those who try to avoid everything godless through their saying neti neti, this is the process of the impersonalists. They're fond of saying, this is not Brahman, this is not Brahman. But that is, Srila Goswami says, that is creating a disturbance. They make things complicated. So the devotee has the perfect understanding of what is spiritual and what is not spiritual. And this is explained through the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy. Simultaneously, one and different. The Lord is simultaneously one and different from everything. And this is not conceivable by material thinking. This is why so-called learned persons would reject it, because they say it's not possible to have two things like that at the same time. It's not possible for them. They can't conceive it because they're trying to understand something spiritual with their material senses. It's like trying to understand God with the mind or the intelligence or the senses. It's not perceivable that way. He's perceivable only through His grace, and that grace is achieved by practicing devotional service under the direction of the Lord and His representatives.
Yes, but I thought of the verse Bhaktya Mama Bijanati. And these other persons, their eyes are covered, or the Lord covers Himself. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrita. Loko mama vijanati, that He is actually covered to the foolish persons by this yogamaya potency, and he reserves the right to keep himself hidden. So, okay, devotees. I think that so. Shri Gauranitai ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnu. Is that it?